His hands found my hips, pulling me close, until there was no space left between us. My breath hitched as his warmth seeped through my clothes, and I felt the familiar tremor start deep in my core. I didn't say a word. Couldn't. The storage room at his house was suffocatingly hot, smelling of forgotten things, and the faint sweet scent of his cologne. His wife was asleep upstairs, a thought that should have frozen me, but instead it just amplified the pulse, thrumming low in my belly. My legs, despite everything, felt heavy, weighted down by a need I was still too ashamed to name. He leaned in his lips, brushing my ear, and a low guttural sound escaped him, more felt than heard, and I let my legs open. I thought I knew where my boundaries were, until he stepped past them. I'm Sarah, 42, a mother of 2 teenagers and a wife of 20 years. My life was a meticulously organized spreadsheet of carpools, grocery lists, and volunteer committees. Predictable, safe, suffocating. Mark, my husband, is a good man, a steady man. He provides, he's present, but somewhere along the way, the spark that once ignited us had dwindled to a barely flickering ember, lost beneath the weight of shared responsibilities and unspoken resentments. Our intimacy had become a silent, polite ritual, performed out of habit more than desire. It was a comfortable cage, and I told myself I was content within its bars. Then David came along. David, Mark's younger brother, fresh out of a messy divorce, seeking refuge and a fresh start in our quiet suburban town. He was 38, all sharp edges and easy smiles, with eyes that saw too much and a laugh that felt like a challenge. From the moment he moved into the guest house behind ours, a tremor of discomfort ran through me. Not because I disliked him, but because I liked him too much, too easily. It was an immediate, inconvenient chemistry. A pull I hadn't felt in years, certainly not for anyone who wasn't Mark. And it was deeply, fundamentally wrong. My responsibilities, my entire carefully constructed life screamed at me. I was a mother, a wife, a pillar of my community. What would my children think? What would Mark do? The questions were a constant nagging refrain in my mind, a moral compass spinning wildly off course. What would you do if the one person you were supposed to protect was the one you ended up craving in secret? That night in the stifling heat of his storage room, with his breath on my neck and his body pressed against mine, I knew I had crossed a line that was etched in stone, not sand. The raw, desperate pleasure of it was intertwined with a profound sense of self-loathing, a sickening awareness of the lies I was living. I couldn't unfeel his touch, couldn't unknow the way my body had responded. It was a truth that would follow me forever, a permanent stain on the pristine canvas of my life. Some secrets don't scream, they whisper. Quietly, constantly. If yours still haunts you, you're not alone. Like and subscribe. Someone else out there needs this truth too. My days slid by in a familiar muted rhythm. The house was a quiet testament to a life, meticulously maintained laundry folded into neat piles, dinners planned a week in advance, bills paid on time. I'd wake before dawn, the silence of the pre-day hours, a comfort, a shield against the noise of my own thoughts. I'd make coffee-packed lunches for the kids, and then after Mark left for work, I'd sit at the kitchen island, staring at the perfectly clean counters, feeling a hollow ache spread through my chest. It wasn't loneliness, not exactly. It was more like an emotional dehydration, a slow, steady draining of anything vibrant. Our conversations, Mark's and mine, revolved around schedules, chores, and the kids' achievements. There was no real exchange, no reaching. We existed parallel to each other, 2 planets in separate orbits, occasionally brushing past, but never truly colliding. David, just a few hundred feet away, in the guest house, was a constant low thrum beneath the surface of my placid existence. He was Mark's younger brother, yes, but he'd always been the wild card, the one who bucked expectations, the one with the restless energy. Now, with his recent divorce, he was vulnerable, and I, in my quiet, starved way, found myself drawn to that vulnerability, even as I recognized the danger. He'd come over sometimes for coffee, or to borrow a tool from Mark's garage, his presence filling the kitchen with an unfamiliar current. He'd lean against the counter, hands shoved into his pockets, and just look at me. Not with judgment, not with expectation, but with a kind of raw, unvarnished curiosity that made my skin prickle. He'd ask questions about my day, real questions, not just polite conversational fillers. He'd listen, truly listen, when I talked about the mundane frustrations of my life, and sometimes he'd offer a wry comment that made me laugh, a genuine, unforced laugh that felt foreign on my own lips. The guilt started then, a low hum, even before anything concrete happened. It was a preemptive shame, a recognition of the forbidden pull. I found myself thinking about him at odd moments, while folding Mark's shirts, while helping my daughter with her homework, even during church on Sundays. His scent, the faint trace of wood smoke, and something citrusy that clung to him would suddenly surface in my memory. His laugh would echo in my ears. I'd catch myself replaying a conversation, searching for hidden meanings, for signals I shouldn't be seeking. It was a betrayal in thought, if not in deed, and it gnawed at me. I'd try to push him away, to create distance, but he was family living, practically in my backyard. There was no escaping his presence, and deep down, I didn't really want to. I wanted to deny it, to be the dutiful wife and mother. But the truth was, a part of me, a small, hungry part, was already leaning into the warmth of his attention, even knowing it would burn. The connection between us started to deepen subtly, at first like a shadow lengthening with the setting sun. We'd find excuses to be near each other. He started helping with small things around the house, a leaky faucet, a stubborn garage door opener, and these practical tasks became thinly veiled opportunities. I'd be in the kitchen wiping down counters, and he'd be there ostensibly fixing something. His presence a warm weight in the room. His hand would brush mine as he reached for a tool, and the jolt would be undeniable, a tiny electric current that ran straight through me. I'd pretend it was accidental, that my breath didn't catch, that my cheeks didn't flush. But I knew. He knew too. One afternoon, a torrential rainstorm hit, trapping us inside. Mark was away on a business trip, and the kids were at a friend's house. David had come over to check on a fuse box in the basement, and when the skies opened up, he simply stayed. We sat on the living room couch, the sound of the rain drumming against the windows, a cozy, dangerous intimacy settling between us. We talked for hours, not about the weather or the house, but about our lives, our regrets, the quiet disappointments that accumulate over years. He spoke of his divorce, the raw edges of his pain, and I found myself confessing things I hadn't even admitted to myself, let alone to Mark. I talked about the suffocating sameness of my days, the feeling of being invisible, slowly fading into the wallpaper of my own life. He listened, his gaze unwavering, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen, truly heard. The air in the room grew thick, charged with unspoken things. He shifted closer, just an inch, but it felt like miles had closed between us. His knee brushed mine, and my entire body tensed, a desperate yearning mixing with a fierce internal battle. My stomach was churning a tight knot of longing and dread. I wanted to lean into him, to feel the comfort of his arms, to drown in the illicit warmth of his attention. Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, to run, to preserve the life I had built, however unfulfilling it had become. But another deeper instinct, one I hadn't known I possessed, urged me closer. His hand, warm and hesitant, reached for mine fingers, brushing, then intertwining. It was a silent question, a silent answer. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the storm raging within me. I closed my eyes, bracing myself, knowing that if I didn't break away now, I wouldn't. We were on the precipice, teetering. He leaned in, his breath warm on my cheek, and I could feel the tremor in his hand echoing the tremor in my own. I pulled my hand back abruptly, almost violently, and stood. The moment shattered, leaving behind a brittle silence. I mumbled something about needing to check on dinner, my voice thin and reedy. He nodded, his eyes clouded with a mix of understanding and disappointment. I retreated to the kitchen, my heart pounding, the scent of him still lingering in the air, a potent reminder of how close we had come. I had pulled back, but the desire, a searing, forbidden heat remained, and I knew with a chilling certainty that it was only a matter of time. The next few weeks were a relentless dance on the edge. Every casual encounter with David, every shared glance, felt loaded, a silent acknowledgement of the storm we had barely averted. Then came the phone call, late on a Tuesday night. My mother, who had been battling a long illness, had taken a turn for the worse. The world tilted on its axis. Mark was already gone on another last-minute business trip, and my sister, who lived across the country, wouldn't be able to get there for hours. I was alone adrift in a sea of fear and grief, and the first person I thought to call, instinctively, recklessly, was David. He was there within minutes, his face grim, his presence a solid anchor in my unraveling world. We drove to the hospital in silence, the car cutting through the rain-slicked streets, in the sterile, hushed waiting room. As the hours dragged by, a raw vulnerability stripped away all pretense. He sat beside me, his arm a steady weight around my shoulders, and for the first time I allowed myself to truly break. I cried not the polite, quiet tears I usually reserved for myself, but a ragged, desperate weeping that tore through me. He didn't try to stop me, didn't offer platitudes. He just held me, a silent, comforting presence. And then when the doctor delivered the news that my mother was gone, it was David's hand that squeezed mine, his eyes that met mine, reflecting the profound, aching grief that suddenly consumed me. We returned to the house in a daze, the rain still falling, a cold, mournful curtain. The kids were still at their friends', mercifully unaware. I walked into the silent house, feeling a cavernous emptiness. David followed me into the guest bedroom, where I had collapsed onto the bed, the weight of the day crushing me. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. He sat on the edge of the mattress, not speaking, just watching me. And then he was leaning over me, his hand gentle on my cheek, wiping away a tear I hadn't known I was still shedding. His touch was a desperate comfort, a lifeline in the swirling chaos of my grief. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse, thick with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on his searching pleading. There was a raw, primal need that surged through me, a desperate hunger for connection, for anything to fill the vast emptiness. My mother was gone. My husband was miles away. And here was David, solid and real, offering a silent solace that felt too dangerous, too potent. He pulled me closer, his lips finding mine, hesitant at first, then urgent, desperate. It wasn't about passion, not entirely. It was about shared pain, about two lost souls clinging to each other in the dark. His hands were in my hair, pulling me tighter, and I felt myself arching into him, a silent plea. Every touch was a confirmation of something fundamentally wrong, a desecration of everything I was supposed to be. But in that moment, consumed by grief and a terrifying, exquisite need, it felt impossibly, overwhelmingly right. The world outside the rain, the silent house, the consequences all faded away. There was only him and the desperate, forbidden comfort of his embrace in the dimly lit room. The door barely closed, leaving us exposed, yet utterly alone. The morning after was a blur of aching limbs and a hollow, unsettling quiet. I woke in my own bed, the empty space beside me, a stark reminder of Mark's absence and of David's presence just hours before. The world felt sharper colors, more vivid, but it was a cruel clarity, showing every flaw, every hairline fracture in my carefully constructed life. I went through the motions of making coffee, getting the kids ready for school, my hands moving automatically, while my mind replayed every forbidden touch, every whispered breath. The guilt wasn't a dull ache anymore. It was a searing burn, a physical weight in my chest. How could I have done that? How could I have betrayed everything I swore to uphold, especially in a moment of such profound vulnerability? Later that day, David came over ostensibly to check on me, to see how I was holding up after my mother's death. We met in the quiet of the laundry room, the rhythmic hum of the washing machine, a flimsy shield against the unspoken things between us. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed mirroring my own inner turmoil. He reached for me, a hesitant hand on my arm, and a shiver ran through me, a mix of revulsion and a treacherous longing. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. "Are you okay?" I pulled away, shaking my head. No, I'm not." My voice was barely a whisper. "What we did, David, we can't." The words felt like ash in my mouth. I wanted to deny it, to pretend it hadn't happened, but the memory was too vivid, too real. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. I know it's wrong, but when I held you last night," he trailed off, his jaw tight. "I didn't plan for it, Sarah. I didn't mean to want you. I didn't mean to want it either." I confessed, the words tearing from me, raw and unfiltered. I wish I could say I hated it. I wish I could lie to you, and to myself. The truth was a bitter pill. Even as the shame consumed me, there was a part of me that craved his touch, that remembered the feeling of being truly held, truly seen. It was a terrifying duality, this craving, and the self-loathing that came with it. I found myself staring at the hallway he walked down to get to the guest room, remembering the desperate pull that led me there and the quiet, damning surrender that followed. I don't know if I want to stop, or if I just want to stop hating myself for not. The days that followed were a precarious tightrope walk. Every shared glance with David across the dinner table, every casual exchange of words in front of Mark, felt like an act. I became an expert at feigning normalcy, at burying the tremor in my hands, the frantic beat of my heart beneath a placid smile. But the secret was a living thing, a constant hum beneath my skin, threatening to burst free. Mark, preoccupied with work and his own quiet grief over my mother-in-law, seemed oblivious, or perhaps he simply chose not to see. His usual detachment, once a source of quiet resentment, now felt like a fragile shield. One evening, we were all gathered in the living room, Mark and I, the kids, and David. We were watching a movie, a light-hearted comedy, but the laughter felt thin, brittle. I was sitting on the couch too close to David, our thighs almost brushing. I could feel the heat radiating from him, a silent, insistent pull. Our eyes met just for a fraction of a second, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it mirrored in his gaze, the longing, the regret, and the undeniable, terrible connection. My daughter, engrossed in the film, suddenly shifted, leaning back against the couch, her head coming dangerously close to my shoulder, and David's hand, which had been resting on the cushion near mine, twitched, pulling back almost imperceptibly. A cold wave of fear washed over me. We were so close to being exposed. The casual, comfortable setting of our family evening suddenly felt like a stage, and we were two actors performing a perilous charade. A few days later, David announced he'd found an apartment across town. He'd be moving out of the guest house. It was a sudden decision delivered with a forced casualness that didn't quite mask the underlying tension. He said it was time for him to get his own space, to start fresh. I nodded, feigning understanding, but my stomach clenched. Was this his way of pulling back, of putting an end to what we'd started? Or was it an act of self-preservation, a recognition that the risk had become too great? I watched him pack his car later that week, standing by the window in the kitchen, the same window where I had once watched him arrive, a new, unsettling presence in our lives. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the driveway. He looked up just as he was closing the trunk, and our eyes met. There was a profound sadness in his, a silent acknowledgement of the irreparable damage the path we had walked down together. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of farewell and perhaps of apology. I've lived with guilt before, but not like this. Not when it tasted like comfort. Not when it made me feel more alive than I had in years.